She dropped an orange first. I watched it roll off the top of her grocery bag and into the crosswalk, and by the time I jogged over to get it, she'd already stopped to survey the damage. Bags listing sideways in both arms, a box of tea bags this close to going over the edge, and the particular expression of a woman doing complicated math about how many trips this was going to take. "You've got about 4 seconds before the tea joins the orange," I said, handing it back to her. She looked at me like she was deciding whether I was a mugger or a nuisance, which, fair, I've had worse odds. "Let me carry some. I'm headed this way anyway." I wasn't, particularly, but I wasn't not headed that way either, and something about the tilt of her hat in the wind made it feel rude to just keep walking. She squinted at me for a second, actually squinted, the full assessment, up and down. And then, apparently satisfied I wasn't going to run off with her groceries, transferred 2 bags into my arms like she'd been waiting for exactly this offer the whole walk. "Eleanor," she said. "Sam. Well, Sam. Don't drop the eggs." It was 4 blocks to her building, which gave us just enough time for her to establish that I worked on a computer, doing something with numbers. Don't ask me to explain it because you'll lose me. That I lived alone 2 neighborhoods over, and that I had, in her words, the look of someone who forgets to eat lunch. I didn't argue, because she wasn't wrong. "You didn't have to do this," she said, as we turned onto her street. "I've been carrying my own groceries since before your parents were born. I know. You looked completely capable of losing that orange with real dignity." She laughed. A short, surprised bark of a laugh, like it had gotten past her defenses before she could stop it. "You're cheekier than you look. I get that a lot." Her building was a walk-up, brick, the kind with a temperamental door buzzer and a lobby that smelled like someone's cooking 2 floors up. She didn't ask me to come in. She just kept walking toward the stairs like it was assumed, and something about the certainty of it made me follow. "3rd floor," she said. "Bad knees." Don't tell me to slow down, I know I'm slow. I didn't tell her to slow down. I matched it. The apartment door was already opening before Eleanor got her key all the way in the lock, which should have been my first clue that this whole afternoon had been less accidental than it felt. "Mom," I heard the woman in the doorway stopped mid-sentence, looking first at Eleanor, then at the bags in my arms, then at me, in that order, with an expression I couldn't quite place yet. "Sam, this is my daughter, Priya. This young man carried my groceries 4 entire blocks and didn't complain once, which is more than I can say for your brother." "Mom, Priya said it the way you say a word you've said 1,000 times to the same person about the same subject." There was a dish towel over her shoulder and flour on her wrist, like she'd been in the middle of something. She didn't look annoyed, exactly. She looked like someone watching a plan unfold that she'd half suspected was coming and still wasn't fully braced for. "Well, don't just stand there," Eleanor said, to both of us now. "Sam, put those on the counter. Priya, get him a glass of water. The man's been hauling groceries in this heat." I set the bags down. Priya got the water. Neither of us quite looked at the other while it happened. Both suddenly very interested in the counter, the bags, the orange that had started this whole thing sitting a little bruised on top. "There," Eleanor said, with the deep satisfaction of a woman completing a job well done. "I forgot I left the stove on downstairs at Marta's. Won't be a minute." She was not visiting Marta. There was no stove. I would learn this later, but in the moment I only registered that a 70-something woman with famously bad knees had just descended 3 flights of stairs at a pace that would have qualified for a light jog, and the door had clicked shut behind her, with a finality that felt less like "I'll be right back" and considerably more like "good luck, you two." "She does this," Priya said, into the silence, still not looking at me. I should apologize in advance. Extensively. Does what exactly? This, she gestured between us, at the water glass, at the whole tableau. Brings home a stray. Introduces him. Invents an emergency downstairs. Last month it was the mailman. The month before that, our building super's cousin who's married, which she knew that. She just didn't care. She said, and I quote, "Plans change." I laughed before I could stop myself. So this isn't a coincidence. Sam. She finally looked at me properly, and there was something wry and tired and a little bit fond underneath it. The specific exhaustion of loving someone whose meddling comes from an entirely good place and is still, technically, meddling. She's been threatening to find me a nice young man since I broke up with someone 8 months ago. I genuinely think she scouts the neighborhood. I think there might be a list. Am I on the list? Or did I make the list today? Today, probably, freshly, she looked at the bruised orange like it might have answers. For what it's worth, you can go. She'll survive the disappointment, loudly, and for weeks. But she'll survive it. I should have taken the exit. It was right there, offered plainly, no hard feelings attached. But there was flour on her wrist and a strange, easy warmth in the kitchen that had nothing to do with the stove Eleanor had invented downstairs, and I found I didn't especially want the exit. "What are you making?" I asked instead, nodding at the flour. "Dumplings. My mother's recipe, technically, though she'll deny knowing anything about it if you ask her, purely so I can't blame her when they turn out wrong. I make a genuinely terrible dumpling, truly, historically bad. I'd consider it a public service if you supervised." She looked at me for a second. The same assessing look her mother had given me on the street corner, I realized, down to the exact tilt of the head, a family trait passed down like the recipe she wouldn't credit. Then something in her expression loosened, just slightly, like a decision landing. "Wash your hands," she said. "If you're going to be on the list, you might as well be useful." Eleanor came back 40 minutes later, stove emergency fully resolved, to find the two of us elbow-deep in flour, Priya laughing at something I'd said, me trying and failing to pleat a dumpling into anything resembling the ones on the plate beside it. She didn't say "I told you so." She didn't have to. She just hung up her coat, surveyed the kitchen with the quiet triumph of a woman watching a plan complete itself exactly on schedule, and said, "Priya, he's doing it wrong. The scene goes the other way," and sat down at the table like she'd been there the whole time. I carried her groceries 4 blocks, because an orange rolled into a crosswalk, and it felt rude to keep walking. I don't think, even now, that Eleanor believes in accidents.